Good evening and welcome everybody who is joining us. This is the Doug and Fur Show. My name is Doug Petrozelli. This is my partner in truth.
Fernando.
And today we're doing a special episode. If you didn't know already, everything that's happening in Ukraine, we believe that we needed to address this and talk about this. Fernando, what are your thoughts so far?
So what's going on is very tragic. It's very crazy, and it's something that's the threat of it has been happening for a long time. Vladimir Putin has
Right.
clearly demonstrated intent of invading Ukraine every year, like for the past God knows how long. Um, but it finally happened, right? Um, and and it's something that pretty much every world leader is condemning. I mean, except for like authoritarian governments like China and stuff like that.
Right.
But pretty much everyone is condemning. Even the own Russian citizens are condemning this invasion of Ukraine. So I think the most logical question, like what people are wondering, is why is this happening? Why is Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine? What's going on? What's the history behind this? And what is the world doing to condemn and to
Right.
stop this, right?
Particularly the Western response, the countries that have the ability to do something about it.
Exactly.
Right.
So why don't you what's the reason why is Vladimir Putin doing this?
Right. So one thing is that I think that we all have to understand is that there's a Western thought, and then there's kind of the way the rest of the world thinks. Before, we had this economic revolution that we have here in the West, which we were very motivated by money, and we think that if we can just have nice stuff and we have this materialism, that's what will make us happy, and that's what will make us grow, and that will give us meaning and purpose in our life. That's generally how we think in the West. And that's the exception. That's not the rule. And that's also the exception when we look at world history, and not the rule. Mostly people are driven by values, and values can be good values and they can be bad values. I think we can mistakenly think, oh, if somebody has values, that they automatically mean they're good values. You can have poor values as well. And this is something that I believe is truly motivated by values, because you would ask yourself, well, why would Russia do this if they're going to get this pushback from the Western world, and they're going to get these economics sanctions that are going to make them a little bit more poor? And we can get into the sanctions because I don't think they're nearly harsh enough. But why would they do that if we could just cut them off financially? And it's because I believe they're driven by the idea of this Russian pride, this pride that we're going to expand the old USSR. Putin looks at the fall of the USSR as one of the greatest tragedies in Russian history. And that he wants to be a world figure, and go down in the history books as somebody who reestablished much of the USSR as possible. That's what he cares about, the values of his own country. Now, I would say that I think those are evil values, and I think they're bad values. He wants to take things over by force. He doesn't want to compel. He doesn't want to bring them into this country and allow them to have freedom and prosperity. He wants to take them into this country and oppress them, and be this tyrant domineering. And that's what I truly believe the evidence points that is driving it.
Yeah, I mean, and he doesn't even deny those things as far as like him thinking that the breakup of the USSR was a tragedy, right? And I was looking a bit into the history of that, and in 1991, it looks like Ukraine declared its independence from Russia even before the USSR was formally disbanded, but it was only by like a couple of weeks.
Right.
And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but then once the USSR officially disbanded, it was okay, Ukraine is its own country, right? So, from Vladimir Putin's perspective, it's like, well, if he thinks this is a disaster, he wants to undo it. If he thinks it was a wrong that was done, like, why did the USSR break up? Why did Ukraine become its own nation? No, it's Russian territory. Then in his eyes, it's like, well, I am justified in taking it back by force if I have to. People
Right.
always justify their actions no matter how wrong they are. Everyone always has a reason for doing what they do. And it's important to realize that like hey your reason can be flawed. Why Ukraine disbanded from the USSR or from the Soviet Union, sorry, is irrelevant. The point is they're their own country, and in order to get them back into Russia, you're going to have to defy their sovereignty, which has been recognized for over 30 years, and you're going to
Right.
have to kill people. You're
Right.
you're literally just gonna have to attack a sovereign nation, kill people, and then install your own government, and you're gonna have a bunch of people that are upset and angry with you. So
Right.
that's what it looks like his driving factor is, and it looks like the response of the world is, hey, we're condemning these actions.
Right.
Um, what does that mean? What does that do? What did we do for Cuba when
Right.
we condemned their actions? We're with you. We're with you guys. March for your freedom, and we didn't do anything.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sure we did some stuff like raise awareness and whatever, but
Right.
nothing that was enough to actually make a difference. And it seems
Right.
like that's what's going on now. What can we
Right.
do to condemn this, but at the same time prevent an all-out war, World War III,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, and I think that sanctions, that's the direction you
Right.
want to head in. Wars
Right.
cost money. I mean, that's
Right.
just the truth. Who wins a war? The people with the most money.
Right. End of the
And
day, that's the
I mean, there
reality.
are exceptions, but at the end of the day, like the people with, I mean, like, yeah, it's not that we lost in Vietnam, but we didn't do anything, right? And we have more money and more technology than them. But for the most part, the war is gonna be won by the people with the most money. And if it's not one, it's definitely the one that's gonna inflict the most casualties and cause the most pain. So if we impose strict sanctions on Russia, and if everyone who condemns this actually does this,
Right.
we're going to hit them hard, and they might need to rethink, hey, is taking the Soviet Union as important as we make it out to be, or
Right.
do we need to now focus on our own citizens who are starving and inflation that went up and their economy collapses
Right.
because we all sanction them?
Right.
So I heard that yeah, sure, we're sanctioning them except for gas, which is
Right.
their biggest export. So why don't you give
Right.
me some more details on that?
Right. So it's been described that Russia is a gas station that has a country inside of it. Just to give you an idea, that gas and the natural gas and their energy, production of what they can produce of natural gas and oil, that is their number one export. That's the number one thing that the rest of the world buys. That is the overwhelming majority of their GDP, the gross domestic product, in which their country produces and then sells to the rest of the world. That's how they make money. Yes, do they sell other things, but they are completely insignificant when in comparison to the percentage in which their total production is.
Like,
So, in order to truly sanction a country like that, we would have to hit them, where it hurts, hit them in the fuel, not hit them in the sanctions of saying we're not going to buy any more little Russian dolls or garments and things like that. I'm sure that would hurt some of those people, and by all means, that their prosperity is would be devastating, but that doesn't hurt the country as a whole. They can take that pain. They can't take the pain of their natural gas being hit. So let's talk about why we won't sanction their natural gas. Because if we did that tomorrow, they would think twice because they'd be running out of money very quickly.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about it, and like, who goes to war without first like calculating the cost and without first coming up with a plan, right? I'm
Right,
pretty sure that Vladimir Putin and his advisors thought about this stuff. They thought
right,
about, hey, we're gonna get sanctioned. Like, they're not stupid. They know this. Can
right,
we take that sort of hit right now?
right.
And despite thinking such things, they went ahead with it anyway, which means they were prepared for this. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were prepared for a natural gas sanction. Hey,
I,
people are gonna.
I, I disagree. I disagree with that.
You don't
And
think they
and
were prepared for that?
not for a sanction on natural gas, because there's two pipelines that are very important. There's a Keystone pipeline that President Joe Biden shut down at the beginning of his administration through executive order, and that was in the United States, and that was producing 800 million barrels of oil a day for the United States.
Billion
That
or
was shut
million?
down. 800 million
Million.
a day for the United States. And we were energy independent from the rest of the world. We actually had a surplus.
We
That
were
gets shut.
going to be if that
Right,
had been completed. Yeah.
right. Had we continued, that's what it would have produced. Now, what do? We still have our lights on. So we have to buy natural gas. And where do we buy it from? We're buying it from Russia. Same thing with the Europeans. They have done the same thing where they shut down their nuclear power plants, their oil refinery plants, to the same thing like the United States, to virtue signal to their liberal bases, saying, "Oh, look what we did! We are stopping these evil greenhouse gases through fossil fuels, and we're stopping nuclear power because all of it's bad." And they spend billions of dollars on this green energy. Problem is with Europeans that all that money resulted in 3% of the entire continent being ran off of green energy, which is not really even green. And we could do a whole show on that. Where are they getting the rest of their energy from? They're
90s.
buying it cheap from Russia. They're dependent on it. So Vladimir Putin knows because he set up a dependency not only from all of Europe, now the United States, because of the Keystone pipeline being shut down in the United States. There's a pipeline now going through Russia. I forget what that name of it was called.
The Nord Stream
Nord,
2.
the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is going directly into Europe, to Germany, as a matter of fact. And now Russia is essentially calling the entire Western world's bluff. Are you going to sanction this and basically have no energy and allow your energy prices to skyrocket to an unbelievable rate because we simply
Hmm.
don't have it? So Russia is calling the Western world's bluff.
And
Maybe we can sanction them for a month, but is Europe going to allow their people to freeze to death because it's wintertime right now?
yeah,
Is it
and
going to allow that to happen? They're going to allow their entire country to shut down. He's calling their bluff and thinking that they're not.
yeah, you know what? I'm inclined to agree with you because now that I think about it, I mean, if we're not energy independent and if these countries are not energy independent, they need to buy their gas.
Right,
And they are like, they're not going to stop buying gas from us. They don't care about Ukraine that much.
right,
So,
and yeah, and Ukraine is not a NATO ally.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. So we're not forced, or we're not like our hand isn't really forced to go
right,
defend them. And we'll talk about Ukraine and NATO in a second. But it looks like that's what happened, right? And from what I read, it says I saw that Vladimir Putin, he's thinking this is the most opportune time to attack and to do this because, hey, I know the whole world is going to be against me in this. I want to do it anyway. When do we do it? Well, right
right.
now is the perfect time because it's winter. So they need to continue buying gas. They have 600 billion in foreign currency reserves, and like now's the best time to do it, especially because they're perceiving the major allies that would do something about it, they're perceiving them as weak. After what happened in Hong Kong under President Trump and what happened in Afghanistan under President Biden, they're like, the U.S. isn't going to do anything. I
Right.
mean, they're gonna write some tweets and tell us that we shouldn't be doing this, but they're not actually going to do anything, especially because Ukraine is not a NATO ally.
Right.
And I fear for what's going to happen in Taiwan, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. But I know that this is true that Vladimir Putin thinks it's a good time because he views the powers that would help his weak. Because um, the whole thing that he said about NATO, he was warning about the Ukraine joining NATO. And for those of you that don't know, NATO is an organization is of Western alliances, European and North American countries that belong to this organization, which is like a worldwide ally organization. They say, hey, if any of us go to war, we all go to war. And that
So it's a
organization,
massive deterrent from anybody attacking any of those countries.
exactly, it's a huge deterrent because, hey, you're not going to win a war against any of these countries because all the other ones are going to back them up. And that
Right.
just became a
They're all the
deterrent.
wealthiest countries in the world.
Exactly, and that just became a deterrent. That became a way for the world to maintain peace. Were it not
Right.
for that, we would have had another world war a long time ago.
Right.
Um, and Putin warned against the Ukraine joining NATO. He said if the Ukraine joins NATO, and I'm paraphrasing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he said something to the effect of, if Ukraine joins NATO, there's not going to be a world for us to live in. I mean, it sucks. Yeah, we're not going to win, but no one is going to win. And we
Mm.
know that Russia is an extremely nuclear capable world power. They're not the strongest power in the world, but they do have nuclear capability, and a nuclear war would result in the end of the world as we know it.
Right.
So that's just so dangerous. And that's why he said that, right? So like the Ukraine better not join NATO type of thing.
Right.
so so let's talk about how our response to this is going to influence China and Taiwan.
Right. So right now we're seeing China has looked at the fact that they completely took Hong Kong from us, which Hong Kong not from us, but they took over Hong Kong, which was essentially a free state that was under the treaty that said there was one China, two sets of rules. two sets of governments. So Hong Kong was its own free city state that was a democracy, that was a republic that protected, human rights, life, liberty, and property. And there's several areas in China that were ex-European colonies that were given back to China, but all those countries were free countries. So when they were given back, they were like, well, we're only giving back in the idea that essentially, yes, we'll be China, but we're going to have our own laws. We're going to be our own democracy. We're not going to be subjected to your authoritarian communist dictatorship. So that happened with Hong Kong. The next thing you know, the United States pulls out from Afghanistan, another place that it promised to protect. The United States also promised to protect Hong Kong. It did nothing. Promised to protect Afghanistan. We pull out. Taliban completely takes over and slaughters, and it's an oppressive. I don't even know what to call it. What type of it's a 8th century ragtag team that is pillaging and raping. They're not even any real sort of government. Allow that to happen. Now we're seeing Russia completely encroach upon Ukraine, and the Western world, the United States specifically, is doing nothing. Taiwan is the next thing on China's list, and they're seeing that essentially nothing's being done, and that's very dangerous. Not only is Taiwan a free and independent people that is very allied with Western democracies, lives by the values that we appreciate and want to expand. Taiwan holds massive interest, not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world. 90%, I believe it is, of semiconductors and microchips that we are implemented into all our technology, our smartphones, our computers, everything, come out of Taiwan. So if that gets confiscated by China, the Western world is in massive trouble. And here's the thing. One of the things that has only been able to keep countries like China and Russia competitive with the West is the idea that they steal. China steals $500 million worth of intellectual property of the United States alone every single year. Okay, so what does that mean? They are staying competitive because they're stealing our stuff. Why? Because they're incapable of innovating on their own. Nobody can innovate without freedom. If you're not in a free society, you're incapable of innovating. The more oppressive you get, the less innovative you become.
Right?
So China has to steal. That's how they become competitive. Now, the thing that actually makes me scared, and I'm not personally a person that finds things too terrifying, but it is pretty terrifying the fact that they're going to get these semiconductors, they're going to hold hostage all these microchips for the ability to build what? AI, artificial technology. AI is something that is capable of innovating the better and better that it gets. AI is the future. Whoever gets the AI perfected first is going to be the one that holds the world power. Now China is going to be able to hold this thumb of oppression over its people and produce innovation. That is a very scary thought, that a country like that would be able to be competitive without stealing, because we can always put more checks and balances to stop their theft of ours. If they're able to innovate from within, they become a massive issue for the free world.
The good news with regards to that is that AI is not at the point yet where it could reliably innovate anything useful.
Right.
Currently, the most AI can innovate is you feed it a bunch of data, like a bunch of songs, for instance, and it can create its own song.
Right.
You give it a bunch of input from a video game, and it can beat the video game on its own. It can learn to win. But as far as innovating something like inventing a new technology or something like that, it's not at that point yet.
Right.
And in order for it to get to that point, people are going to need to work on that. Scientists are going to need to work on that and come up with that.
Right.
And I think if China takes Taiwan and they own all these semiconductors and things like that, in order for them to come up with the AI that would do something like that, they need to innovate because we're not going to
Right.
give it to them,
Right.
knowing that they control that aspect of the market. And I think we're a long ways away from getting to that level of AI, especially with the type of government like China has, where it doesn't allow for people to be creative because it just oppresses its people.
Right.
Um, and I think that that's something very similar in Russia, where, Vladimir Putin has certain ideologies that, I mean, and just like any person, you find the most evil person, and they still have certain things that you can agree with. Um, so there are certain things that Vladimir Putin believes that are like, okay, you know, you're a horrible person, but that's actually a good point. And then property rights and the respect that it has for people. It's like, do you even believe in human rights? I mean, I know he believes in human rights because he offered that the Ukrainian citizens be treated with respect, and anyone who lays down their weapons should be offered like complete pardon and safety. But anyone who refuses, obviously, is considered a military target.
Right.
So I know that he respects human life in that regard, but I don't know if that's so much of a respect for human life or more like of a way to smoothly transition and to set up his own government. He's obviously not going to commit mass genocide in the Ukraine, um, but definitely property rights and people's freedom to do things. That's not something that he believes in or supports. He wants
Right.
to go back to the way things were with the Soviet Union. And I don't understand why people want to keep going back to communism unless you're the one in power.
Right.
Um, I saw some things recently, and this is how scary Vladimir Putin thinks, where Russians are going out to rally and to protest the invasion because not even Russians agree with this. I mean, some of them do, but they're going out to protest this, and he's cracking down on them. He's saying
Right.
anyone, and he said this. This is not something that he's doing. He said it, and they're doing it. So it's not like he hid this. Anyone who goes out to protest and to rally and to he mentioned riot, but just to rally and protest in general, the Russian war effort, they're going to be cracked down on. They're going to face legal consequences, and they've
Right.
arrested since the invasion started 3 or 4 days ago. They've arrested 1,500 people. I think they arrested 1,500 people on the first day. It's
Right.
probably more now. Um, and he says they face severe legal consequences, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
that's the kind of government those people live under, where
Right.
hey, you don't have the freedom to dislike what the government is doing. You dislike it on your own time, but don't come out here and protest. So that's what Ukraine has to look forward to
Right.
if Russia is able to successfully
Right.
complete this invasion.
Right.
So
And go ahead.
no, I was going to ask what your thoughts are with this going forward. What do you? It seems like the Ukrainians are putting up a fight. Their
Right.
citizens are staying behind. Their president is strong, and they're asking for
Right.
help. I don't know if they'll win, but I know guerrilla warfare is very effective.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to
Right.
happen here?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Russia is a much bigger country. If the West doesn't step in some sort of way, I think there will be a downfall. But what are some practical things I think we could do? Tell President Biden to get the Keystone Pipeline in the United States up and going. Let's produce 800 million barrels of oil here a day. We only need 600. That's 200 billion more surplus. The United States itself can cut Russia off and then sell oil cheaply to the Europeans, and they can cut them off and still have their energy sufficiency.
Hmm.
Let's at least push back, to some degree. I would also like to see some actual pushback, and I think that we should call that Vladimir Putin's bluff. In all honesty, for him
He's
to
not going to
say that
start a
there's
nuclear war.
right. I don't think that it will. I don't think that we should stand up to tyranny like that. We're a country that believes in freedom and laying down our lives for what's right. And who I think really understands that right now are the Ukrainians. And one story that I heard was this island called Snake Island. It's an island off the coast of the Ukraine, and it's a little military base there. And there's 13 servicemen there, and they're getting intel from a Russian Navy ship that's coming in there saying, "Hey, this is the Russian Navy. We have you surrounded. It's time to surrender." And what the Ukraine military sent back was, "Go f yourself, USSR Navy or Russian Navy," and they all laid down their lives for what was right. And I think that that's commendable. I would rather die for what is right than live and be taken over and lay down and be taken over.
Hmm.
I think that we have to ask ourselves, yes, we have to be strategic. I'm not here to provoke necessarily, somebody that, said they're going to start an all out nuclear war. But at what point do we have to be a nation to say, do we really believe in these human rights that we say? Do we really believe in the expansion of our democracies and in the places that they're already established? Like, yes, we can't fight every single war all over the globe, but the places that democracy and freedom are already there, like, I think that there's a responsibility for us to say we believe and have the ability to do something about it, to push back and say we're not going to allow places that have moved forward regress. I think that there's a responsibility, and obviously we want that spread all over the world. But if we truly want that, we have to at least put an effort in to the places that are moving in that direction. Like Taiwan already did, like Hong Kong already did, like Afghanistan was moving in that direction, was probably only 3 or 4 generations from there being some sort of democracy in the Middle East. Like Ukraine already was in that direction. Yes, it was corrupt. Yes, it wasn't perfect, but it was moving in the direction of what we want to see the world look like. Do we really believe in these rights to the degree that we're just going to keep them at home? Or do we truly believe that there are superior ideas that would be better for the whole world? I think they are. I think we should push back.
And I think that we should help anyone who wants to attain that. We should
Right.
help them get it. I don't think that we should help people that don't want the help.
Absolutely.
And one example is I hear of North Korea and my heart breaks for those people. You
Right.
think that you think that Russia is bad, you think that China is bad, North Korea is bad. I highly
Right.
recommend that everyone who watches this podcast go on YouTube, and I'm actually going to look it up right now, and follow or just watch a couple video voices of North Korea. It's a woman who escaped Voices of North Korea. Her name is Yeonmi Park, and she
Yes, she's
escaped.
amazing.
Yes, she escaped North Korea. And it was I think she went through some stuff.
Yes, she
But
did.
she escaped, and it took her a long time. She lost family, but she escaped, and she talks about what life is like there. And from when you're a kid, like you have to go to school and you study whatever you study, like math and whatever, but the biggest portion of your grade is studying Kim Jong Un. You literally have to take classes on him, and they
Right.
they will quiz you on what they teach you. And the things they teach you are things like this: Kim Jong Un came out of a mountain on the sun, and his face was shining like a god. And they teach you that he is a god, and they will ask you questions, and you have to pass the test. From when you're little, they are indoctrinated, and my heart goes out to those people. They cannot go from town to town. They can't they can't live normal lives. They have to do everything the government says that they have to do. They
Right.
have to serve in the military for 10 years. It is just brutal. Watch Yeonmi Park and listen to the things she has to say about North Korea, and your heart will break for those people. And I'm thinking, why don't we help them? And guess what? We tried in the Korean War, and we failed. And now it's at the point that they're so indoctrinated that the majority of Koreans believe that the
North
US,
Korea. North
yes, the
Koreans.
majority of North Koreans believe that the US would be foreign invaders. And if we were to help them achieve their freedom, they would fight us. They would
Right.
fight back, and they don't know what freedom is like.
Right.
And that's
They
not the
don't even have
case.
a word in their language for
For,
freedom.
for exactly. And that's not what Ukraine is like. Ukraine wants their freedom, and those people
Right.
are willing to die for it, and I think we should help them.
Right.
And if we don't, I'm not saying they could be North Korea, but within several generations they could be just as indoctrinated and think that the US would be invaders and be in that same cycle. I think that
Right.
anybody who wants the freedom, any people or country that want freedom and that are under tyrannical dictatorship, I think we should be there to help as people that are capable of helping.
Right.
So, especially people that we have promised to defend.
Absolutely. And we did make promises to Ukraine to defend them. That was all part of our influence of having them giving up their nuclear arms with the promise that we would defend them without allowing them into NATO. The U.S. alone made that promise in '94, and
Yeah.
we have broken it
And if they
today.
had nuclear arms, they wouldn't be in this mess.
Right. If they had nuclear arms, Russia would think twice about that.
Exactly. So, I mean that those are my thoughts on it. I think it's very sad, and like, hey, we'll help you, and the most we do is sanction vodka and potatoes, right?
Right.
So, so it's just it's not right. I think we need to do something, and
Right.
that's that's all I have to
Right.
say.
Right. And I think that we're going to end this on maybe a somber note. But please, if you have any thoughts and you would like to discuss this further, please let us know. Please write into us. Maybe we'll have you on the show. If you disagree with us, please, we'd love to have that, and we'd love to have civil discussion about that. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being with us.
Oh
This is
yes.
the first show.
And if you are Russian or Ukrainian and have thoughts on this, we'd also love to hear it. Um,
Yes.
That would be something awesome to have. And once again, we're open for disclosure. We just stated our opinions very clearly here, but we will never insult you or judge you if you have a differing opinion and want to come on the show and talk. We just want to know where you're coming from, what your thoughts are. So please feel free to reach out to us and we will have you on the show and we'll talk.
All right. Good night and God bless.